Welcome to Homestead Reptile, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the crested gecko community versus the garter snake community and the major difference between these two groups. So, the first thing I want to mention is if you're in the crested gecko community, and if you've been in the Facebook groups for a few years, you will notice the amount of drama. Lots of drama in those groups. I mean, there's drama in every group, especially with the animals. You're not caring for it properly. That animal is stupid. That animal is ugly. Those genetics are stupid. I don't know what you're doing. That's stupid. Blah 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 blah. You're an animal abuser. All that stuff. All that stuff and more. There's more scams with the crested gecko groups. Um, Not like the group members themselves, but because they're a popular pet, there's a lot of scams around crested geckos. People stealing photos. There was this huge incident where someone was basically they were purchasing geckos from a ton of different breeders, and then they would say it's like act like they were underage and they couldn't buy the animal, and their father was upset with them, and they did chargebacks on those geckos. So that was a huge scandal going around for a few weeks. This person got a lot of people and a lot of geckos and a lot of money off those people. So that's a huge problem. So there's a huge problem with scamming on both ends. So people that buy geckos and people that are selling geckos. There's more of them than there are in the garter snake community. And I would say there's a few reasons for that. So crested geckos are extremely popular, but they're very easy to breed, and there's a lot of breeders. The garter snake community is much smaller and much tighter knit, and there's probably like a handful of breeders in the United States. Because there's a handful of breeders that are breeding captive bred garter snakes, it's really easy to find out if someone is a bad actor. So, say so and so is a bad actor, they sold you garter snakes that didn't have the genes they said they had, they sold you sick snakes, they sold you a snake that was improperly sexed or whatever. And if they're consistently doing it, everyone will know it in a short period of time, and they will basically go under. They'll have to change their name, do whatever, but it's really easy for a small niche group like garter snakes to basically easily police themselves a lot more better than with crested geckos. So that's one interesting aspect. It's like, I think it's just because garter snakes are a smaller group, more niche group compared to crested geckos. So something else I noticed that is kind of interesting. So when you think garter snake, you think of your, backyard snake. You think that's a cheap snake. That's probably like a $25 snake. It's like they're cheap. They are not. So the garter snake prices have really increased. So a normal eastern garter snake is generally going to cost you around $100. Especially on morph market. Now, you might be able to get away with one that's $75. If you want to morph with an eastern garter snake, you're spending more than $100. So garter snakes have become more expensive, and crested geckos have become much cheaper. So there's a lot of really nice morphs like lily whites. Lily whites have gone down in price a lot. So for a not so good generic, basically McDonald's brand lily white, it's just a lily white, nothing else special about it. It's going to cost you around $125. I've seen some at expos for $75. They're really, really coming down in price. Garter snakes are not. Garter snakes are going up in price because there's a higher demand and less breeders. That's one aspect. They're just becoming really popular, and I've noticed in the reptile community, colubras in general are becoming more popular. Colubrids are pretty awesome, and garter snakes are pretty awesome. There's a lot to really like about the species. So the pet keeping side of garter snakes versus the breeder side of garter snakes are pretty in tune with each other. So normally most breeders keep their garter snakes the same way that pet keepers keep them. With crested geckos, it's a little different. So breeding setups could be smaller. It's the how they breed them is very different. The one thing I will say is like the crested gecko community, especially if you get in touch with some good breeders and you want to learn the ropes of breeding, they'll answer your questions a lot better. There'll be more information, and there'll be more information available just on the internet. With garter snakes, it is very, very difficult to get information. So, say I breed eastern garter snakes. On eastern garter snake morphs and phenotypes. So there's a type of phenotype in eastern garter snakes called diamondback. It's basically the dorsal has like dashes in it, and it kind of gives it a diamond-like pattern. It is known within the hobby, but you'll find zero information on it. Same thing with albino eastern garter snakes. You'll find very little information. There's a lot of amazing eastern garter snakes out there. You'll find very little information. Crested geckos, you can find information very easily. There's tons of guides. There's tons of people that will help you. There's tons of YouTube videos out there. I've made a lot of YouTube videos about different morphs and combinations of what you can expect to get. Eastern garter snakes and garter snakes in general, there is very little information on morphs, on what you're likely to get with breeding, on selectively breeding for traits. There's very, very, very little information on eastern garter snakes. So that is pretty interesting. So it's two different groups and two different types of people that are into them. So garter snake people generally are people that are really into garter snake. A high majority of them are men. People that are more interested in crested geckos, it's 50-50. It's like, it's leaning more on the female side. There are more women that really like crested geckos than garter snakes. I don't know why. It's just, that's what I've noticed within the groups. But if this was interesting to you, like and subscribe. Tell me what you think of the two species. They're both fantastic in their own individual ways. And it's not necessarily fairest to compare a garter snake with a crested gecko. But looking at these two different communities, and one that is basically oversaturated and one that is undersaturated, is kind of interesting. Like and subscribe.